All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Becoming an Institution Level Cyber Infrastructure Leader, the 2025 workshop. It is Wednesday, August 6, 2025, and this is our session on recruiting and retaining computing and data intensive researchers. Our moderator is Dorian Arnold from Emory University, and I'm going to throw the microphone over to Dorian to introduce the panel. So take it away, Dorian.
Thank you, Henry. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. So, as Henry said, I'm Dorian Arnold. I'm an associate professor and a computer scientist here at Emory. I've been doing research in the high performance computing space for over a couple decades now. As a CI user, my usage is mostly from the systems and the evaluation side of things, not as an application user. But so I bring that context. But this show is not about me. It's about our wonderful lineup of panelists. And the conversation today will be about recruitment, recruiting and retaining CI users, CI researchers, right? And in fact, for this panel, the focus will be on researchers, not CI professionals, right? In fact, that's an underlying theme of the entire workshop. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. I've asked them to introduce themselves with the spirit of giving us some context for who they are and the center or facility that they work at and help to manage and run. So the talking points for the panel itself, we've organized the session into four topic areas. We'll be talking about opportunities and gaps to attract new types of users to CI infrastructure. Once we've identified those types of people, how do we go about actually getting them to understand the value that CI can bring to them? Once they understand that value, how do we help with the transition as they go to use these infrastructures? And then once they start using the infrastructures, how do we keep them there, right? How do we retain them? So that's sort of the structure that for the conversation, the topics for the conversation. Um, the talking points for the introductions will be around the types of centers that the panelists work at, the types of people that have access to the centers, the types of ways those individuals use the resources, and then the types of support that their centers provide for their users. So I am going to go in alphabetical order. And with that, I'll ask Patrick Clemens to please introduce yourself for about 2 minutes or so. You have about 2 minutes, please.
Sounds good. As Dorian said, I'm Patrick Clemens. I'm at the University of Vermont, and the center that I work under is would be probably best described as the EPSCoR program. And so I definitely come from the research side of things. I have a close relationship with our central IT and our computing center. In fact, they fund part of my time, and I do a lot of work with them. But I'm definitely on the researcher side of things, and so I'm more into the office of the vice president of research than I am under IT. But I do have a computing background, so I kind of bring my main role is kind of bridging that gap between the researchers and the computing, which is why we're all here, right? As research facilitation. So everyone technically has access to me, but my kind of shtick that I've developed over the 12 years I've been there is working with large research centers. And I have a team of 3 or 4 or 5 software developers, depending on what grants are funding me and my team. But basically, large grants can afford custom server infrastructure, software development. Those teams would come to me, and we work together to build out a large computing platform for like a 4 or 5 year center level grant. So all the research teams I work with are multidisciplinary, multi-PI, large numbers of grad students and postdocs. And so I'm kind of in this like niche area where mostly soft-funded. In fact, I would say 95% soft-funded on these long-term research grants. So building kind of a community within each research grant and a relationship with those PIs. So that's a good intro for me. You can go to the next person. Oh, you're muted, Dorian.
Thank you. Wayne, could you please go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Wayne Figuarelli. I'm the Assistant Director for Innovation and Outreach here at Penn State University under the Institute for Computational and Data Sciences. It's an interdisciplinary institute. It reports under the Senior Vice President for Research. So all of our research computing and high performance computing are under that arm of the university. We roughly have around 25 staff. I'd say about 10 of them are the research software engineers, about 15 would be the engineers and administrators in support. We support over 3,500 users. As far as the compute resources that we offer a variety of models. So the first is our OpenQ. And the OpenQ, anybody who has an account can request for up to 100 compute cores for wall times of up to 48 hours. This runs on very, very old hardware, some that we should have decommissioned, but that's where it runs. Students, researchers, faculty can request an account, and they must have a faculty sponsor, though, for that account. Obviously, the faculty don't have to have a faculty sponsor. Next is the, sorry, just.
I think Wayne got eaten by a shark on his
Sorry,
beach.
sorry about that. I think I lost I lost my signal there for a second. Okay, so where was I? So yes, and then we have two other models. We have a reserved allocation model, and then we also have a pay-per-use credit-based model. And most of our faculty would utilize what I would call as a hybrid approach, where they get both the reserved allocation model for basically interactive and debugging, and then also they get that credit-based model as well. So I know that we were supposed to stay to 2 minutes, so I'm going to leave it kind of there, and we'll get into some more details later.
Thank you, Wayne. Kong?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Hi, everyone. Khan Huang from North Dakota State University. I am the Executive Director of a high-performance computing facility here. So we are under the VP for IT. Just some basic information about the center. We currently have, it's a small team. We have 7 staff member and several student interns. Right now, we have over 120 different research groups actively using our facility, mostly on campus, but we do have other research groups from other institutions in the state of North Dakota. And of course, we do have external collaborators from, across the country. The resources are free. We have compute resources and storage and support and everything. It's free unless when someone wants to have a lot of long-term storage space, or if they need to have premium access to the compute node, and it can be on a fee-based basis. So lastly, we do have a very rigorous training program and internship program. The training program offers training workshops every semester and boot camps, etc. And the internship program can be considered as more in-depth training. There's an opportunity to train students. And it became very useful for us, especially when we need to get people to work for us.
Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you, Dorian. Ashok Krishnamurthy. I'm the director of the Renaissance Computing Institute, which is a research computing institute at UNC Chapel Hill, and we report to the Vice Chancellor for Research. Certainly, we are much more focused on the researcher end of things rather than the computing infrastructure end of things. There's totally about 95, 96 staff members at RENC, maybe about 60 of those are technically oriented. We are roughly working about 4 different areas. We have a lot of projects that are focused around health. Then we have a bunch of projects that are basically focused on high-end networking. We, for example, run the Fabric program for NSF as an example. We also have a group that is focused on software architectures, build computing cyber infrastructure, basically of various kinds, not just HPC, but other kinds of computing infrastructure. A lot of our work of late has been building uh, clusters using Kubernetes and running applications on those. We also have a group that does data management. Among the most important thing they do is they run the IRODS consortium. So if you are an IRODS user, if you use it for any purposes in your data in your operations, the IRODS consortium is run out of RENCI. We also have a group that does Earth data sciences. A lot of it is around modeling storm surges and how climate models and weather prediction models interact with how storms are going to do affect the coasts and how they're going to continue to affect the coast. So those are the main areas. We don't necessarily run infrastructure for anybody to come in and use. But when we work with researchers and they need access to infrastructure, we then give them accounts on our systems and work closely with them. And typically, every one of our projects is associated with a research theme that our researchers work with faculty researchers together. So start there.
Right. Thank you, Cherry.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. My name is Fang Liu. You can call me Cherry. I'm a senior research scientist at Georgia Tech and manager for research software engineering team at the Georgia Tech Central Research Computing Center called PACE. I'm also the associate director for open source program office at Georgia Tech, which is funded through Sloan Foundation to build the open source ecosystem in academic setting. So currently in PACE, we provide several different type of resources. We have the like a 1,400 nodes research cluster, and include the 300 GPU nodes for the research only. And also we have another small cluster, like around 100 nodes, but 300 more GPUs in that cluster, mainly for instructional cluster. We also have a CUI cluster around 130 nodes. People can do all the CUI and ITA type of research on that cluster. So recently, we just got a 20 million ASF OAC Category 1 awards, which we will building an AI supercomputer in a year. So we constantly have actively more than 1,000 active users on our system. Basically, every people in Georgia Tech are eligible to use the resource. So faculty and tenure track faculty and the research faculty, they automatically can get access as long as they submit the request for account. And their students, they can submit some requests on behalf of their students and postdocs to gain access to the resource. And students without a supervisor also has a way to apply for the computing resource through EVPR, some EVPR funding, and they can also use the resource. So PACE actually is under the vice president for IT in Georgia Tech. So in terms of cost, so every user who access to the system, they get a free tail account. So the free tail means they get 100K CPU hours and 1 TB storage free per month. And every month they get a rollover, and you can roll over 3 times every time. You get more free tier allocation. And after that, if you need more resource, then you need to purchase. So PACE was originally running as a Conda model when we built it in 2009. And about 6 years ago, around 2019, we switched to the cost model. So this is what cost model looks like. So people can purchase the resource through their grants. And those purchases all get FNA overhead waived. So support, yeah, we have all kinds of supports. So we have user support and also consulting sessions, user support through tickets, consulting sessions. We have a monthly trainings, workshops, and user documentations. We also have a shared mailing list for the community support.
Thank you, Cherry. And Jim, last but not least.
Yeah, thanks, Dorian. And just a special shout out to Henry Neiman for bringing this all together. It's such a valuable component of building our community. So thanks, Henry, for that. I direct an organization called Research Computing at the University of Minnesota, and I report directly to the Vice President for Research. The organization under Research Computing that I'll really focus on today is the Minnesota Supercomputing Institute that we actually call MSI. So MSI, by the numbers, we have under Research Computing 100 plus staff. Over half of those actually report up through MSI. We have 5,400 active users. These are users who have to renew their access every year. These are lumped into groups of faculty members, typically are what we call principal investigators, and we have a little over 1,000 principal investigator groups, and we serve over 120 different departments throughout the system. So we support not only UMN system campus faculty, staff, and students, but we also support other Minnesota-based institutes of higher education. And we also provide access to industry partners. And so most of our systems are available for free to our education and research users through a fair share mechanism. But we also make it possible for faculty who have dedicated needs to purchase access to systems over various terms. Our industry partners access our compute and data storage at essentially market prices, which we adjust according to what the market price is. We have a very active help desk, and many of our informatics staff are included on grants and paid for by sponsored support. So depending on the group, that could be half of the cost of some of our staff. We also support a number of tutorials, user groups. We're active on social media outlets, and we generate newsletters to meet folks essentially where they are. And so that's kind of MSI in a nutshell, and hopefully we'll get into some more things that we do.
Very good. Thank you all. So we've heard a variety of different contexts, different usage models, different cost models, different sizes, with centers placed different places in the university. So with that backdrop, let's jump right into it. I'm gonna target specific panelists with the various questions. We have a wealth of panelists and a wealth of questions. And we also want to allow time for the audience to ask questions as well. So I am monitoring the chat. If you have questions, please ask them there, and then I'll fit them into the set of engagements that we have. And again, I'll ask the panelists that you each take about 2 minutes per question. I'll target the questions at specific panelists. If other panelists have additional context or perspective to add, please feel free to do so, and I'll be in charge of making sure we stay on time. So the first question I'll target at Wayne and Kong, and it is about finding new users, right? And so the question is, what successful approaches have you found to identify new researchers at your institutions? And what might be some clear signals that a researcher can benefit from scaling up or scaling out their workloads beyond the small scale resources that they might currently be running on? So Wayne, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. And apologies for my power blip earlier. So basically, we take a proactive approach, and I think that is very important. So I go ahead and I meet with the associate deans for research from the majority of the colleges, especially the colleges that are the primary suspects. Okay, I know you're getting into unusual suspects next. So I so I go out and I meet with them because, quite frankly, if somebody is doing research and they need some level of a resource, they're going to their associate dean for research. So I make those connections, and those connections have been very helpful. And in one of our models is the pay-per-use credit model, and so we have the ability to offer credits actually to colleges. So I know many of you may get funding from colleges. The colleges did not used to invest in our center, but through the credit model, they're able to procure credits, and then they can actually see where those credits and dictate where those credits go. So they're actually proactive in going out and trying to find researchers that can actually use these credits. And it makes a nice complement to our faculty that come to us typically through maybe a ticket or through we also have been trying to recruit faculty for over 10 years. And so we get a lot of repeat faculty that come in and try to and want to utilize the systems. In terms of the individuals who do not, we also set up partnerships with our counterparts in the CIO side of the house, and make sure, because it's really very advantageous for them, because then they don't have to manage all these workstations that faculty tend to buy. Everybody's happy that now they're not using the power or the heat distribution in one of their closets, et cetera. So those are, I would say, partnerships and proactive approach are the two lessons learned that we have.
Thank you. Con?
Yes. The approach can be different from one campus to another, but I think it is necessary to maintain a certain level of visibility on campus. By that I mean that, somehow many people on campus know that you exist and has some basic idea about what you do, what you can offer. I think, and we can talk more about how to do so, probably later. Now, but having that visibility is not sufficient, right? I mean, very often we need to reach out to researcher directly. I mean, sometimes I just send email to certain researchers, say, hi, how you doing? And, yes, anything that we can help you with. And I try to get a list of new faculty member from the office of the provost. And if they are doing something that may use, computing facility, I would reach out to them and say, say, hi, welcome to the campus, and yes, anything I can help you with, right? And of course, lots of other activity, that, we can participate and then try to, have a conversation with different researchers. I think that's a very important. I mean, I try to send in the past, I try to send out like mass email, and I say, okay, we are happy to sit down with you and have a conversation with you. With you, but usually it doesn't go very well. People just ignore the email. But if I send an email to someone specifically saying that, okay, how's things going? Should we, just meet up and chat about what you are trying to do, right? So the most important is try to initiate an informal conversation with the researcher, right? And once they sit down with you, I mean, you can learn a lot about what you're trying to do or plan on doing. And of course, you can insert, certain information about what you do, right? So once we had that conversation, I mean, things become very clear about what they would need in order to get a research done, what kind of resources would be more suitable to the projects that you're working on, right? So things become very easy after having that first conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Con. So I just wanted to follow up with asking the panelists for a quick show of hands. In your context, how many of you do individualized, personalized, bespoke recruitment, right? Like saying, Professor X in Department Y doing research on Z, you can use our resources rather than, again, the blanket sort of mass emails. So I see 5 of 6 hands. Good. Okay, just wondering. As again, folks are trying to envision what strategies work, what strategies people are employing, etc. So, Ashok, I'm going to direct the next question to you, and it is going in the opposite direction, right? So, rather than the departments, the research domains that you typically think of, um, do you have examples of maybe types of researchers, types of research that one might not typically think of that could be viable candidates for using these types of systems, using CI infrastructure and institutional infrastructure?
Sure. Yeah. I can certainly give you examples, and I think that I would say that in the last, if I were to go back over the last 10 years, the attractor for non-traditional users coming and wanting to work with a center like Renzi has been evolving. And I would say 10 years ago, it was really the buzz around data. There are every domain that you may not even think collects data. They may have nothing to do with, they think they have nothing to do with computing. They think they may have nothing to do with cyber infrastructure, but they are, they have a rich resource of data. And as data science became more and more prominent, a lot of the contacts we used to get was, hey, I have all of this data. I don't know what it means. What does it mean to harmonize data? What does it mean to handle data at scale? Can you tell me what some of the things are? So that used to be one of the attractions that was there about 10 years ago, and that's still there. But now more and more AI is the driver. Again, everybody says AI and hears about AI, and they say, "What does it mean? What do I do?" I think I need to pay attention to this, but I don't know what it is. How do I set up a system to do modeling? I mean, if they are ever going to get beyond just an interactive chat GPT interface and really start calling on these AI tools to do something, then they are suddenly, reaching beyond their current capacity in these different areas. So we work with a lot of people in nursing, for example, that run into such issues. We are working with people in the School of Education, the School of Law. You would think these are not traditional CI users, but they are all doing data and especially text nowadays, a lot more and more. You can imagine lawyers have a lot of text that they have to crunch on, and things like that. So that's where we are seeing some of the more non-traditional users come to us for help in these issues, in these regards.
Awesome. Thank you. And so just briefly, and again, in this case, I'm going to target Cherry and Ashok, but where should we not waste our time trying to recruit CI infrastructures? By that, what might be some use cases, some scenarios that are just poor fits for, the environment, whether it be because of the type of computing or the scale or some other reason?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the most common things that we find out where we realize that no, this is not a good fit for us is, unfortunately, in many cases, it revolves around data security, and there are a lot of cases where the data there's just too much of a left to be able to deploy the data in our infrastructure. The price to us to be able to provide the level of security that the data requires. For example, data around childhood education, right? I mean, that's very sensitive data. They need resources, but we can't help them. So that's I would say one example is around the security associated with the data where we are not able to handle it. The other place I would say is that sometimes the the path to get the data, even if the data is not necessarily has security constraints, it may be just too difficult to be able to get the data into a form that makes sense. The example I can think of was there was an interest to take the entire collection of laws that have been passed by the state of North Carolina over the past however many years that the state has existed. Much of it is in the form of microfiche records or scanned, documents. Many of them they're not even scanned; they exist in some sort of a physical format. And if you really want to do analysis on that and try to understand the trajectory of how laws have evolved in North Carolina, well, it's a fantastic problem. I would love to be able to help the researcher who has a problem, but I don't have the ability to scan microfiches and physical documents and convert them into data that I can then do processing on. And so you say, no, I'm sorry, I can't go there. So two examples.
Thank you. Cherry.
Yeah, so in the Georgia Tech, we actually, yeah, encounter some of cases like say, especially there's like Georgia Tech has three of AI institutes from NSF. So one of them is the adult learning and online education. So there's one time they approach us, say, yeah, we want to have some web interface so that we can access to backend resource to run some machine learning algorithm. They found some online one, they can run freely on there. However, this resource is limited. When they run a large problem, they cannot run it. And they come to us, say, yeah, can we get help on that? We have to say no to that because we don't have a good way to provide a web-based service. That's somehow like a security concern there. So all the web browser we have to put behind the firewall is not open to public. And other things is like say that there's a lot of software development behind the scenes needs to happen as well to make sure their model running on our system. So yeah, that's one time we said no to to them, even though we are so eager to collaborate with the institute. There's another case we had is the professor from a class, they are asking to establish some persistent database so that all the students can access the shared data during the coursework. So that we also we help them to explore some options. For example, go to the like IT infrastructure, like a database support, and but they only support the Oracle or something like that. And eventually, we have to say no because we don't have people to sit down to develop the good plan to support this model. And also, we don't have a charge model as well because we are in the cost model base. So we don't know how to charge for the persistent database to run on our system. So that's two current case we have to push our user away. Mm.
Thank you. And Wayne, I think you want to add something.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is it's okay to not be everything to everybody, everywhere, all the time at no rate or no fee. Okay. So make sure you let your faculty know that if they can obtain no cost to the institution resources, we try to drive them there. It's like, hey, if you can go get access resources or some other resource, that's going to meet your needs, it's okay. It's okay to let them go get resources that don't occupy your time and your actually your resources.
Got it. Thank you. And so Serena, I see your question. To everyone, Serena is not a plant, but her question actually segues nicely into the next question that we had, that we will target at Ashok once again, right? And so the question is about the users and finding users and such, right? So Serena's question is about external users and how did you go about finding external users and such. The original question was really just about the users you have, period, right? And the pathways that those users took to, or that you took to finding those users, whether they came to you, you went to them, right? And such. So, Ashok, users, how did you find them, whether external or internal, or how did they find you? What sort of strategies and tactics?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So Renzi has kind of is in a unique situation. We are located at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, but we, by North Carolina law that created Renzi, work across multiple institutions, and in particular, our oversight is also from NC State as well as Duke. So all three institutes have a say in how Renzi runs. So we go and recruit from all of the three institutes and beyond, but those are the three primary institutes. And the way we do that is that we have regular meetings with the with the research officer, the chief research officer at each of these three institutes. We meet with them on a regular basis, typically twice a year, and tell them about what we are doing and ask them if they have any users that would benefit from a relationship with us. So that we do that. That works sometimes, but doesn't work always, because even when the chief research officer may think that there's some group that can benefit from you, that doesn't necessarily is not necessarily the case that the group wants to work with you. So, the places where we are much more successful in finding users from other institutions to work with is when we have relationships that get established to existing researchers we are already working with. That's probably the single most important way that we find new users external to us, is that somebody at our institute, who at UNC Chapel Hill, was really happy with what we are doing, and they have colleagues in other places, or they have a joint project with somebody in another institution, and they say, "Hey, you know what? I've been getting good things from Renzi. Why don't you talk to them if they can take you on?" And so that's the main.
Great. Thank you. And Cherry, I think you might have some context and then some perspective to add here as well.
So are we talking about the external user or just how to the current user? Because
Right. So both, right? Start with current, and then a part of the question also was, or the user, Serena's question was, what percentage of your users are external versus internal? But you can start with
yeah.
the current users and their pathway to becoming users.
Yeah. So currently our class only opens the GTRI, which we treat as external, but no industry external user at all on our system. So basically, I think um, I would say we are well established, has very good reputation among the faculty. So even every year when they do new faculty recruiting, sometimes I get invited to talk to faculty in one-to-one to tell them about what we can offer, things like that, become part of their recruiting process. So usually people has research computational needs when they apply for Georgia Tech's faculty position, they get startup. So the startup funds can be easily transferred to the credits to our system, and they will use us. So I think the things to convince them to continue working with us, because we have technical staffs can support there. So there's one faculty from ES, like aerospace engineering. They have to do a lot of very complex climate simulation, and they have an account on an NCAR, but they still choose to use us because they get a local support. It's the best to fit their needs. We work with them in one-on-one for fashion to help them put in their code and speed up their code locally.
Thank you. And so, Kong, I'll direct the next question, which is very related to this one, to you, right? About marketing strategies, right? So, could you talk about any particularly innovative strategies for recruitment and marketing that your center employs? You already began to talk about some of the personalized, attention that you give to people and such. But again, so any particular additions you want to add to how you guys go about selling your ware?
Yeah, from our experience, having a well-run, regular, well-advertised training program help a lot. I mean, just by the fact that, every semester you send out training announcement to the whole campus, just to keep, our facility on people's radar. I think it's mean that we have been able to reach out to a lot of people already, right? So at the end, of course, for those who attend the training, of course, it's a great opportunity for us to talk about, our resources. I mean, so on and so forth, how to work with us, and right. And in addition to the training, yeah, many other activity that we can do. I mean, especially like campus event. I mean that let's say orientation for new faculty member, orientation for new graduate student. I think those are great event to talk about what we do and what we can offer, right? Try to talk to department chair or college dean of course, in addition to talking to faculty member, right? So, I mean, yeah, lots of different activity that we do. I mean, I don't focus on a single one. We have a combination of different activity, from, bottom up to like top down, to try to reach out to everyone. So,
Good. Thank you. And for this question, I'll just throw it out there. If any panelist has anything they'd like to offer in the context, please do. And it is about using other people to help to be advocates for your systems, right? So whether they are current users, aspiring users, just fans of what you do, right? Where, if anywhere, have you all found opportunities to where other people become proselytizers, right, of the centers that you have? Yeah, so talk about external advocacy from people that don't work about at the centers. Wayne.
So I'll go back to my first comment that I made. So we've developed relationships with the associate deans for research. The director of the institute develops relationships with the deans of the colleges. They develop relationships with, he also develops a relationship with the provost. I develop relationships also with the department heads. So I think Cherry had mentioned we get engaged in the faculty recruitment that they bring faculty from external that they're trying to bring in as new faculty. We get engaged in those at the appropriate time. Okay, whenever they're down to their final candidate or et cetera. And then we actually, whenever we're into it, we'll actually write in to their startup offers their resource needs. And so whenever faculty are signing on the dotted line, they are able to see what computational resources they're getting whenever they come to that. So all of that little network at the high level, that what that ends up doing is whenever a faculty member is like, hey, I want to go out and I want to buy this workstation or that workstation, they're sitting there saying, hey, why don't we try to see if you can get your needs met over at ICDS.
Thank you. So we're going to transition to the next.
Can I respond to that quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that like PIs, faculty, and postdocs and grad students are the best marketing tool that I have. Like, they have grants that collaborate with other folks. And by us doing good work with PIs and having them be very happy with the services that we provide, that stuff spreads like wildfire. And so I often get a grad student or postdoc kind of cold emailing me saying, hey, I hear you've helped someone else do this. Can you do something similar for me? I've been referred to PIs to help write grants and get our team, written into their grants for some funding that way. They are by far my best marketing tool.
Very good. So I'm going to use that and take some executive license to jump around in the questioning, because I think that topic of sort of advocacy and user satisfaction, user happiness with the system, we were going to revisit when we talk about retention and how important it is for users to be satisfied in order for them to not just remain, but again, advocate. So any more perspectives on the value and importance of making sure that once the researchers attempt that first to use the system, that usage actually meets their needs in an efficient, satisfactory way, so that again they can continue to use the system and even beyond that become advocates. Anyone wanting to add to that?
Oh, so you mentioned the satisfaction. Yeah, I think let me put it this way. I would emphasize the professional staff's skills. Uh, if we can help them solve their problem quickly, and sometimes they say, "Haha, I didn't mention that. I didn't thought about that, but you guys bring that, solve their problem quickly." It will make them very happy on that. And another thing is solve their problem on time. So we have the way approach, say, we have a weekly meeting to review all the outstanding support tickets to make sure those stay in the frame, resolution frame. So to meet with service level criteria on that. And also the system stability is also important. Because last year we observed that because we have a 4 unexpected outage outside of a maintenance window, which caused some frustration from our researcher. So system stability is also something we need to make sure is happen. But sometimes out of our control. For example, the water pump just failed, no cooling, so have to shut off the cluster.
Right.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
No, yes, thank you. In fact, so I appreciate that that perspective, especially about the timeliness of getting to your solutions. I remember when I was becoming a faculty member and trying to write into my startup package, I need X amount of dollars to buy some shiny cluster, and my advisor said to me, he said, Dorian, think about how much time you spent as a systems researcher administering a cluster, and think about how much time that took away from the research you wanted to do, right? He said the best case you can be in is if you actually don't own and manage the resources, but have access to the resources in a way that approximates the ownership and the management, right? Where you have the ability to do all the things you want to do in efficient, timely ways, right? And so that your response resonates, Jerry. Thanks. I'll go Wayne and then Patrick.
So two things in terms of retention. First thing I would say in terms of retention is one of the things, again, being proactive, right? If you just let your faculty just go ahead and compute, that's fine. We actually try to meet with faculty once a year, and that is every PI that has a resource. We try to meet with them every year just to try to analyze what they're using and try to make adjustments, and they really appreciate that. And then secondly, if you're talking about retention actually at the university, make sure again your deans and your department heads make sure that they understand that quite frankly a lot of faculty would like some level of computational resource added to their package whenever you're trying to retain people.
Thanks. Patrick.
Yeah, sure. So again, my situation is a little different with providing kind of more of like a concierge service to, larger teams. But like in terms of satisfaction, like what the researchers tend to care about are the publications, right? Like us getting them on a service and writing software and getting the data generated, like that's all really great. But taking them home, taking that publication and getting some of our folks' names on those publications, that's really for me has been a huge benefit to building that satisfaction, knowing that we're with them until the end. And so again, we get funded by these PIs, and so we often attend the research meetings. Not necessarily every week, or every single one, but we regularly just pop in and allow them to, then being in the room makes it so they don't have to reach out to you. You're kind of there and available to ask questions. I think that availability and responding quickly to queries and kind of becoming part of their team has really helped us build these long-lasting relationships. And we've worked with some of these PIs now, and they continue to fund us 10, 12 years into this process. So, I think I don't think of this as like providing a service. I think of this as becoming a member of their team and providing them a link to the computational needs that they have.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And I'll again take the liberty to add another anecdote. So, one of my most cited pieces of research came about through an organic partnership with like facility administrators, right? So, where they had large systems, they were actually at the Livermore Labs, and they were running into problems on these systems. So one of my research areas is in performance analysis and debugging and fault tolerance and all those things. And so we were sitting with these people experiencing real problems as they were trying to manage their systems. And we were conjuring innovative, creative ways to solve these problems, right? We call that research. They have a real problem. We want to, innovate and then solve the problems. And we came together, right? So, and that unification that allowed two things, right? We came up with useful ideas, um, and we were able to. They were interested in those ideas because it was helping them to manage the systems that they had. They ran our software prototypes on, at the time, it was the Blue Gene L, the largest supercomputer in the world, right? So we had scale results for our research paper at scales that no one else could actually even ever get, right? But it was also solving real problems. We ended up with publications, joint publications. We ended up with funding. We had an R&D 100 award, right? So I think that speaks to your point, Patrick, about the partnerships and the collaborations that are enabled when we visit the value that each person can bring to a situation. Awesome. Um, so keeping it moving, challenges that folks face as they try to transition, right? So they see the systems, they want to use the systems, they see the value, they see the partnerships. What are some of the biggest challenges that researchers often face when trying to transition to larger scale CI infrastructure? And how can you all help them overcome those challenges? Pat and Jim, I'll start with Jim.
Yeah, thanks. I divide these up into, roughly speaking, sort of two areas. One is sort of structural and the other is technical. And so I'll give an example. What I mean by structural is when we started to work with the College of Liberal Arts here at the University of Minnesota, the whole model that we operate under, where we have a PI, a faculty member, leading a lab, is not the model that is often used to get things done in CLA grad student environments. And so we were already sort of creating a structural barrier that was preventing people in CLA, graduate students in CLA in particular, to access our systems. And so we worked with their group called Lattice on campus, and Lattice really is the service provider for the liberal arts. And they are often sort of the helpers, if you will, to those graduate students who are at a point in their research where they need to scale up their computation or their data analysis in some way. And so that structural change made a big difference in that case. Technical ways are pretty straightforward. I mean, probably everyone's experienced this. I'm going to do a shout out to the OSC folks for developing on demand. That's something that, by its very nature, has sort of lowered the barriers, providing a more natural interface. Many of our respective centers and institutes use that now. It has a large following and group that are actively involved in its development. And so that helps. And then, of course, training, just meeting people where they are and making available training opportunities for people to understand how to use a job scheduler or how to even use on demand, because in some cases that also might be completely foreign, and just having a person there to help with those sorts of barriers is helpful. So those are the sort of two general anecdotes that I have.
Yeah, I mean, Jim's exactly right. And so the way I approach like any single situation is, you have the CI here and you have the user's ability here, and you have to get them to match up, right? And so in my mind, like training brings this up, the user's ability to use the CI up, and lowering the barrier brings the CI down. And at some point they have to meet. And I think every situation based on the researcher and the research team requires, sometimes you gotta they bring the top further down, and sometimes you gotta raise the bottom further up, or sometimes they're already most of the way there. But it is definitely a combination of, training to some degree, um, without making the researcher frustrated about learning all this new stuff they may never use again. And then using your own team and your own resources to develop tools that lower that barrier of technology, whether it's through like um, wrappers around software that make it easy to use, or like command line scripts that like do a lot of the work behind the scenes. All that stuff is stuff that us facilitators with computing expertise can easily write, but for a researcher might be really challenging. So I always really try to find that golden point in the middle for each of the engagements that we have. And it just varies depending on how close they are to the CI that we have available.
Thank you. I will recognize Ashok, but also ask that he and the other panelists consider this addition to the question, which is the relevance of humans in the loop, right, in helping to overcome these challenges versus technology, right, whether it be software or technological services and such. In a moment where we're starved for the funding for humans, right, and we'll become more starved in the moment where FNAs are being threatened and the things that allow us to put people in the loop become challenged, right? So, Ashok, you first, and with whatever else you wanted to add,
Sure.
but the relevance of humans in the loop.
Thank you, Doreen. Yeah, so I would say that, for many researchers that we work with, um, the cyber infrastructure and things like that are not necessarily so interesting that they want to just jump at it. What they really want is to get their research accomplished, and so they would really like to. They have a way of doing things, and they don't want to change. What they would like is, I don't want to change how I'm doing things, but I just want to do bigger things now. How do I do it, right? And sometimes it's just not possible. But if you just take the attitude of saying, well, that's the way you do things, but if you want to scale, well, sorry, you got to change your business, how you do your business, and you got to come to us, and this is how we do business, and you better adapt to that. That's not a very good way to convince them to try you out. So I think that recognizing that their fundamental need is to get their research done, and there is some issue that is preventing them from scaling up or getting to where they need to go, and then showing them a path that doesn't necessarily seem extraordinarily disruptive to their current workflow, I think is very valuable. Not always possible, but where that can be done, that I think it makes a big difference.
Thank you. So I'll target this next question to Cherry and Jim, and maybe you as well, Kong. And it's actually going to be a blend of Brian's question in the chat and the original question that we had, right? So as we think about users transitioning and adapting to a different environment, right, there are some parts of their ecosystem they should keep. There are some parts of their ecosystem they should adapt, and there's some parts of their ecosystem they should probably throw away, right? And so speak about sort of that balance and how you help your users, your new users, get that balance, especially as, again, you're trying to make sure that they have a satisfiable experience, an efficient experience on a system where, as Ashok and others have put it, they don't really care about the system except as it is a means to them to get their research done, right? And then to add the twist of the question of Brian's question, and situations where it just doesn't work, right? Where there is, an impedance mismatch or something that just becomes an obstacle that was too great to overcome.
Maybe I can start. So in terms of adaptation, so usually when I work with user, I like to say, yeah, because the reason you want to use a centralized cluster is, I think, performance is the most key fact. Because if they can run inference just on cluster, just a couple of seconds, but on their laptop, like 20 minutes, definitely promote them to looking for using the cluster. So for the traditional user, like especially just for example, like ANSYS is a GUI-based application. And usually I suggest users say, yeah, you can just migrate partially your workflow to the system to see how you like it. So what I said is like you still use your GUI locally to build your own like the structures and generate some input files. And then when you actually run your computation and run it on the cluster. And so start with that. And until they see that, wow, that's so quick and the performance is so great. And then we can think about, yeah, can maybe try to do that using our open-on-demand interface. We also have the ANSYS. You can run multi-node ANSYS from our open-on-demand. And then we introduce another thing to them. So this like a staged approach can reduce their overwhelm from the beginning and help them to learn as well. So yeah, that's my experience so far.
Thank you. Jim or Kong, anything to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah, just I'm pondering Brian's question a little bit more, and if I could, yeah, I mean the closest thing to a horror story for me is when NIH comes up with additional requirements on some of our systems where, we've been able to protect privacy adequately, and again, these extra layers and implementing them in an environment can be a huge challenge. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, for example. And so, those compliance requirements actually aren't just restricted to our federal funding agencies, but also have to do with data use agreements that we have with some of our industry partners. And so we are under the Office of Research Innovation. And so one of the things I think that distinguishes us from a technology standpoint is that we have to be innovative in terms of finding solutions and developing rapidly to accommodate these different cases, specifically where we need to address controls that live up to the standards that are being asked. And so that has been top of mind for everything we do now. And the horror story aspect is more for us, just the very frequent meetings that we have with various entities on campus who are evaluating what we've done. It's not just what we've done, but have we done it, to the level that they're expecting, or do they even understand some of the technologies that we've implemented? These have been huge challenges. And again, we face these both for federal sponsored research that we do, as well as, again, some of our industry partners who are concerned, rightfully so, about intellectual property that is hosted on our systems. So that's something that hopefully resonates. But again, the key thing here is, I think, research computing distinguishes itself from some other areas on its ability to innovate. And we're very fortunate to have staff here who are excellent at that, but also just have the attitude that this is what they signed up for. And, we can hopefully turn this around quickly and figure out solutions to some of these challenges that we face as the world changes.
Thank you, Jim. Kong, did you have anything you wanted to add? And then Asha.
Yes, I want to circle back a little bit to the challenges, for new user and your ability to adapt to the environment or platform that we provide. I think, in our work, I think it's also important to do some expectation management. Several of us mentioned open on-demand, and indeed it lowered the barrier. But from the user perspective, you still need to learn. I mean, because working on a high-performance computing cluster using a shared resource is different from running on your personal computer. So there's a little bit, at least a barrier that you need to jump, you need to learn. And then, in reality, not everything is available through open on demand, right? Usually we tag certain, get a small portion of our resource to open on demand. So it happened very often that several of our users you run on open demand, and at a certain point that you need to run bigger problem, and the advice would be, okay, you need to learn how to run your job in a batch mode. You need to learn a little bit more. So what I'm trying to say here, in our conversation with user, I'm trying to make them understand that they need to put some effort, into doing it. Everyone want to get the publication, right? Get the research done, get the publication. And several users said, okay, I just want to get my research done. I don't care about Linux. I don't care about anything. I just want to get my research done. But much you understand that, in order to get your research done, you need to learn a little bit. You need to put a little bit more effort into doing it.
Thank you. And Asha?
I was answering Brian's question in the chat and about horror stories, and it's not always easy to speak about horror stories because sometimes they're failure events in some sense. But I just thought it's still important for us to share that. So I was going to give you one example that we encountered where we were running an application for a faculty member that was talking to a database, doing some compute on it, and then providing that data through a web interface to a group of users to come in and use. And in the course of time, we had to sunset that version of the operating system and had to move on because it was no longer being supported. And we sent out emails to everybody who was in there and said, you got to move your application because this is happening. And then at some point on some date, we just shut down any of those that hadn't been updated. We're just going to shut it down. And we did that. And 6 months later, the faculty member reached out to us, extremely unhappy. It turns out that this was an application that wasn't used on a daily basis, but when they needed it, they needed to use it. And this was a case where she was writing for a renewal of the grant that was funding this app, and she suddenly realized that it no longer is up and running because we had shut it down, and so we then had to engage with her and try to fix the problem, et cetera, et cetera. And sort of one of the lessons that I learned from it is that before you do any such thing, I think that if I had picked up the phone and made a phone call and said, we're going to do this to, the handful of people that this was going to happen to, perhaps the situation could have been avoided. Just email saying you better do this and is not enough. So it was as much a failure on our part as I think to some extent the blame also rests on the PI. I don't know if that qualifies as a horror story, but that's what I got.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just to maybe add something to Ashok, because he added something very important at the tail end was sometimes, when we think of these system changes, if it's changing quotas or getting rid of software, really taking the time to figure out who's going to be impacted is key. And often it's not as many people as you might imagine. If you ask the question, how many people are going to be impacted by this change? And, people sort of scratch their head and say, I'll get back to you. Let me see about that. And, maybe the number comes back and it's 6, maybe it's 12, and even though it seems like a big change, the impact might be pretty focused on a specific set of users. And that makes it really possible for you to do that sort of personal touch that Ashok mentioned, where you could send the emails and say, this is happening, and give them that heads up so that they know about this, or have a opportunity to sort of vent if there's no opportunity for change.
Right. So we are close to time, and I wanted to give the panelists a chance to offer a closing statement of about 60 seconds or less. So here's what I'll do. I will throw out 2 or 3 prompts out there that sort of capture the remaining questions we didn't get to. And in your 60 seconds, you can choose to address those or something else. So as you choose, right? So the topics we didn't get to were sort of one was on the relevance of external communities that help to support your users, whether they be regional or national or even international communities that can help to support and retain your researchers. Um, Another was about the involvement of your users and researchers in decision making that affects the center, whether it be procurement or system configurations or other major decisions about the center and its operation. Um, and there was another question sort of looming about our current context and climate, right? The economic pressures, the political pressures, and the different challenges that our current time is bringing in the management of cyber infrastructure, but particularly as it affects users and researchers, right? Recruiting them, retaining them, right? So those are the prompts. I'll each give you 60 seconds. Do with it what you will. I'll start with Jim.
Yeah, thanks first of all for the opportunity to talk with this panel and the audience. So I would say the big thing is that a lot of what we do is not technical. I mean, a lot of what I do in my own research is technical, but when I really think about running the center, it's about people, and we work with just the smartest people in the world, and tapping into them and their Rolodexes of networks and so forth is, I think, essential for this part of building community. And so really connecting with those people in your environment who are willing to, share their knowledge and reach out to their communities is a great way to develop CI, but also to bring new people into the fold.
Thank you. Kong.
You threw out, yeah, lots of important stuff in. But I just want to mention quickly that I think it's important, to let your research community know about what you do. It's important to let your university leadership know what you do, because without that understanding, that knowledge, they will not be able to support you and fight for you, right?
Thank you. Ashok.
I'm going to address the last of what you raised, Dorian, and one of the things that the current climate for research overall, one of the ways that it is certainly affecting to some extent us is if you're dependent on research funding to keep going, and in particular, if others are dependent on research funding to keep going, and if you have any dependence on F&A returns to be able to keep your center up and going. Sometimes you get asked a question, okay, if I move my stuff to you, how do I know you'll be around in 4 years? How do I know you'll be around in 3 years or 4 years? Especially those questions are coming up more and more under the current environment, and it's something that's not easy to answer. It's a tough time in that.
Thank you. Cherry.
Okay, so I would think about the like engagement with external community. I think so. Currently, we highly encourage our team members to actively engage to the external communities, especially like join their Slack channels for people like using some tools, join their Slack channels and join their monthly calls to gain more knowledges. So I think the similar thing while we're working with our researcher, we found when we found they have some interest in to use some tool we are using, we introduce them to those Slack channel to introduce them like engagement, help them to engage to the community. And some of them even grow up as they eventually become our team member eventually. Yeah. So I think that's what I want to address.
Thank you. Wayne.
So I'm going to just address three things. Number one, addressing the change, right? So I know your IT team is always looking to enhance and innovate and change, okay? Somebody has to be the voice of the of the faculty, because even as Jim said, it might only affect 12 or 6 faculty or what have you. I'll just provide a little bit of counter. There's typically a lot of change that's happening, and your faculty have so little time, and they'll carve out so much time for X, Y, or Z, and you have to be able to make sure you're looking at that. Second thing is in terms of getting input and advice, I would highly encourage you. We have actually two faculty groups that provide us input. One is a power users group, which are a group made up of those high impact, high consumers. And then we also have a group that is kind of a faculty advisory group as well. The power users group will propose things, and then we have the faculty advisory group that helps to establish what we're actually going to implement. So those two things, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Wayne. And Patrick.
So, I'm in the maybe sometimes enviable position of being rewarded mostly on quality versus quantity. And so I'm able to I think the way that I do retention, the best is through building these communities of researchers and building a community that, you know, is capable of using computing resources to get their work done. And when you hit tough times like this, you have that community to fall back on. Like all the PIs are having the same trouble getting grants that I am. And so we can band together, we can say, okay, these are the priorities we're going to have. These are the grants we're going to go for, and we're going to work really hard to support you in your career, your students in their progress, and me and my team in, helping get the job done. So building a community has really helped me, retain those researchers and then also weather these hard times.
Good. Thank you. And with that, I'd like the audience to help me thank our wonderful panelists, Patrick, Wayne, Cherry, Ashok, Kong, Jim. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the panel and moderating quite a bit and learned a lot. Very interesting conversation, very interesting and diverse perspectives. And so I hope the audience found it just as fulfilling. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take
And
care all.
thank you,
Tomorrow.
Dorian. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Dorian, for great moderation. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
great
welcome.
job, Doran.
Great job, Dory.
Yeah, thank you all. And please let's give a round of virtual applause. And I've already seen some come through. I think this must be a new feature on Zoom. Uh, and I want to thank our panel for a terrific session. I'm really happy, and there was a lot of interaction going on, and a lot of really valuable information and wisdom. I want to do a quick program announcement for tomorrow. We are starting at I think it's 10:30 a.m. Sorry, 10:45 a.m. Central Time. That's 11:45 Eastern, 9:45 Mountain, 8:45 Pacific. And tomorrow our sessions are deciding which technologies to adopt and when, leading teams of CI professionals, and low-cost solutions for hardware. So we look forward to that. Thank you all. And I'm going to try and get the videos posted tonight. I'm usually able to do that. If not tonight, then hopefully early tomorrow. I want to thank you all for a wonderful session. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.